Hey guys, Corey with Camel Adventure Products. I'm going to do the install tonight on the Honda Africa Twin for our new ATR tank. The ATR tank is compatible with several popular hard pannier systems. The install is very straightforward. The biggest challenge with the install is removing the bodywork on the front to be able to get the gas tank off to do the plumbing. We're not going to spend a bunch of time on the removal of the panels. We have another video on our channel that shows exactly what needs to be done to get all the bits and pieces off. So we'll get through that pretty quick. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to take off the front seat, the pillion seat, and there's two bolts in the back here, and take those out. We've got a template that we're going to use to drill up underneath the inner fender here. If you have a pannier system that has a crossbar that goes across here, then this is already going to be done, and the Camel Tank will actually mount directly to that bar. Obviously it depends on which brand you have. The list of panniers that it's compatible with is available on our website. We're just going to go ahead and pop these off and get these holes drilled. And we're just going to take these two bolts out here. In your kit, there's going to be a drilling template. You're just going to cut this out with scissors. And then we're going to go up underneath and mark the center of these holes on the underside of the fender. And then you can stick it to the inner fender well on the bike, which will make a lot of sense when you're looking at it in person. And then we're going to take an awl and we're going to mark the center of those holes. You can use a nail or a screw or anything sharp to mark those. You can tear the template off before you drill it, or you can drill right through it, doesn't really matter. And we're going to drill 20 millimeters or 13/16. I like to use a step bit. It does a really good job, leaves a nice clean hole. Once that's completed, we're going to take our hanger bracket here that's included in the kit and our M8x80 bolts. I'm going to drop those in, put the 44mm spacers on, and then everything is just going to slide up into the holes that we just drilled. And you will have to wiggle it around a little bit. If you can get your head over top, you can actually see the bolts coming through the threaded bits in the subframe. We're going to come to the top side, and we're going to use the M8 nylock nuts on the bolts that just went through. And with that completed, we can put the pillion seat back on. So obviously this is the tank. We have a saddle bracket, got an adapter mounting plate, got our front mounting bracket, our fuel cap. If you've ordered the optional tethered cap, this is the tether and the bolt. It is important to note that the bolt is in with the tether, not in with the rest of the fasteners. We do get quite a few emails from people saying that the bolt wasn't in the fastener pack, but it is indeed with the tether. We've got two packages of fasteners. This one is open because we already used a couple of the bolts out of it. And then we've got a miscellaneous fastener package here. It has some fittings and some more nuts and bolts. We've got two 90-degree hoses here. If you have a US bike with a charcoal canister, your kit's going to come with 3 hoses, and we've got some zip ties. Well, first thing first, we're going to assemble the tethered cap. So the bolt itself is longer than the threaded hole in the cap. That's so we can tighten it down and still have the tether spin freely with the cap. I'm just going to put a tiny dab of blue Loctite on here. All the fasteners in this kit are going to get blue Loctite unless they're already a nylock nut. Just with the vibration and stuff, this being a adventure bike and down rough roads and things, we can lose bits and pieces if they're not Loctited. So there's a little bit of Loctite on here that spilled over, so when this dries, it's going to drag a little bit. You just need to give it a couple of rotations and it'll clear. And we're going to put the cap on the tank now. Just going to keep things from falling into the tank as we do the install. And our saddle bracket is going to come on your kit, slid on here. It is a tight fit. You'll pop it off. And then we've got an adapter plate here that has 12 holes. The 4 outside holes line up with the holes on the saddle bracket. And the 8 holes on the inside are going to get longer bolts so that we can put the clamping caps on top. So with the bracket that we just put on the bike, we've got 2 clamps. They're going to go over these holes here. If you have the Touratech system, you've already got the crossbar here, and this is on an angle. So what we've done is drill these 4 holes to line up, so this is still at a 90-degree angle, and then these clamps are going to go over top. So we have some M6x40 flathead bolts. I've color-coded this on the back just for the installation. The one that you get isn't going to have the different colors. So the red that's on here is for the Touratech. So if we were doing Touratech, we would drop the 4 40mm bolts in there, and then we put washers and regular nuts on here, Loctited, but we're not using the Touratech system on the install. We're using our supplied spud, so we're going to use the blue holes. And I'll just hold that up right there. You can pause the video, have a look at your bracket, figure out which holes you're going to need. So I'm going to drop those in. Give that a flip over. Grab the flat washers. 1 flat washer on each. And 1 regular nut on each. And we're going to put a dab of blue Loctite right down by the base. We intentionally didn't use nylock nuts here because we didn't want to have to run nylock nuts all the way down to the base. And by the time we got there, even if we did use locked nuts or nylocks, the nylock would basically be worn out. So just regular nuts with blue Loctite. And then we're going to snug these up. You may have to back the bolt up with a wrench when you're tightening the nuts, but usually they don't spin. I say that and I've got one here to get. So on our saddle bracket, this is the back. It's going to go on like that. With our adapter plate, the bolts go on the back side. So this is going to mount on top like this. There are 8 of these little guys in your kit. They are M6x16s. You actually only need 3. There was a typo when we ordered the parts, so you're going to have a bunch of leftovers. So I'm going to put one the back right corner, back left corner, and front left corner. And then you're going to put a washer and a nylock on each. And then in your bag, There's an M6 by 25, and that's going to go in the front right-hand corner. With that done, we can take the saddle, drop it back on the tank, and there are 6 of these large buttonhead M6 bolts, and they're going to get just a dab of Loctite on each one. And with that done, we can spin them in. And we're not going to tighten these down all the way. We're going to leave it a little bit loose. These holes are slotted, so there's a bit of movement back and forth, just adjustability between bikes and racks and things. And again, on the front bracket, we're not going to snug them right up. These holes are slotted, so there's some adjustment here as well. We're going to go into the miscellaneous fastener and fitting bag. And there are 2 stainless washers, there's 2 sealing washers, and there's 2 barbed ORBs. One of them rattles, one of them doesn't. The one that rattles is a rollover valve. And we're going to take the washer. There's a 45-degree bevel cut in here, and that goes towards the O-ring. Then we're going to put the sealing washer on. And then we're going to put this on the top of the tank. And we're going to tighten it up just so the sealing washer comes out about 1 millimeter or 1/16 of an inch or so all the way around. It doesn't even need to be all the way around, it's just generally around. And then the same thing up front. Backing washer, sealing washer, and thread it into the front of the tank. And the same thing, about 1 millimeter all the way around. And then we're going to take our clamp caps, and we're going to drop them over the studs that we put on. And we're going to take 4 nylock nuts and just get them started on top. Going to back up here. Before you put the outside cap on, you can take the tether and put it over that stud, and then drop the cap on. And that's what we end up with. So there's a lot of different pannier systems that we're working with. The Touratech, like I said, is going to use these 4 holes. So these guys are going to be sitting on angles to match the angle on this crossbar. If you're using something like Happy Trail, that's just going to clamp right onto the bar. We're working with Beaumont, or Beaumont I should say, and they have a new bracket that will be available. If you're using SW Motec, you're going to use our spud. If you're not using any panniers at all, again, it's going to be our spud. And these guys are going to be straight in line. Alright, so when we're doing this, we want to be moving at a reasonable pace. so that Loctite doesn't sit up before we get a chance to get them totally tight. We're going to come up front. This is your pillion peg mount. And we've included two spacers. One's 11 mil, one's 8 mil. The thickness of this bracket is 3 mil. So when we stack the 8 on top of the 3, we get the 11. And then we've got two hex head M8 by 35 bolts, and they're going to go through your pillion peg mount, through the spacers, through the front mount, into those holes. So 11 mil in the front hole, 8 mil in the back hole. We're not going to tighten these all the way down right now. We're just going to get everything started. Then we're going to come to the back. We've got the spud here that we've already installed. You've got the clamp caps already on there. Just slide everything forward and slide that over the spud, just like so. And with that, we can snug these bolts up. It is going to squirm around a little bit until you get everything tight. Forgot to mention here, with the longer bolt we've put in this location, it's for a P-clamp that it's going to hold a hose. So we're going to put that on here right now so we can get this all buttoned up. So we've got one of our 90-degree hoses here, and we've got a spring hose clamp. These are pretty gnarly. There's quite a bit of tension on them. So you can do them with the pliers. I recommend wearing safety glasses, as they can go flying across the shop. And if they do catch you in the eye, you're gonna be wishing you had glasses on for sure. We're gonna slide that over top of the vent barb here at the back on our rollover valve. Just like that. We're going to take our P-clamp, we're going to put our hose through it, squeeze it together, find the right location for it, and these can be a little bit miserable. These ones are stainless, so they've got quite a bit of strength. Just need to get the holes lined up. I'm going to drop that over top of the longer bolt that we put in the back, and then we're going to take another M6 nylock and get that started. And then we can go back to tightening up the clamps here. And once that's done, you can come in. You have to come in from the back side here to get this nut, because it's up to the body. With that done, we can tighten our 2 bolts on the front bracket and the 4 on the saddle bracket. Now your tank is mounted and we can tackle the plumbing. And we have our vent hose here, and it's going to plug in to the 90 off the tank vent. And it's going to run between the tank and the body, and you can feed it through here. You may want to loosen these off just a little bit so you can get the tank to wiggle out to the side, and then we have some room to work. And if you do it that way, just make sure to freshen up that Loctite. So now we've got to plumb the tank, and to do that we've got to take the plastic off to get the tank out to get at the fittings at the bottom. And as I mentioned, we have a video that shows you how to get all of that off, so I'm not going to go through it in this. We're just So this fitting right here, this is a bigger diameter one with a bigger diameter hose. This is an overfill line, so if you splash gas when you're filling the bike and it goes around the filler neck, this drains out to the ground. The smaller one here is the vent line, and this is what we're going to tap into to get the vacuum for the Camel Tank. So there's a black connector right here, just a clip, and it just holds the small gray vent line onto the fuel line, and it's this guy here. So all we're going to do is unplug this vent. We're just going to split this apart here. There's a plastic splice. And then we're going to set that aside. You want to hang on to it in case you sell the bike or take the Camel Tank off for whatever reason. You can put that back in. And because this just drains to the ground, there's no need to plug it. So we can just tuck it back in here. Okay, we're going to take our fuel line and one of our 90 sections here with the brass hose barb in the line. Slide the 90 on the other end of the brass. There's two different size spring hose clamps, and the smaller of the two is going to go down here like so, and the bigger stays up top. You'll be able to figure out which one is which because the bigger one slides over this fairly easy. The smaller one, there's quite a bit of drag and you have to open it up to get it to slide down the barb. We're going to add one of the bolt style hose clamps here on the larger line. So it's best if you take, you can use WD-40, silicone, spit, whatever. Just give this a quick shot here on the end. And then we're going to work this onto the fitting on the bottom of the tank. Now when we do this, the hose is actually going to run over to the right hand side and then loop back around. It's just there's a lot of stuff going on down here, so it's easier doing it this way than it is simply putting it straight down. Just going to make sure that we have the hose clamps turned away from the electrical connections here. So we're going to take the bigger of the spring hose clamps and put it around the fitting on the bottom of the tank. So hose is going to go slightly to the right hand side and then down and out. Like that. So we're just going to get the hose down here. On a non-charcoal canister bike, that's it for the under tank portion of the plumbing. So we can just drop this back onto the mounts. We've already run our vent hose here earlier. Gonna run the fuel line along the side. Then we're going to take some of our zip ties and secure the fuel line to the frame. And we can just leave them loose for now. So we're going to put one right here. And we're going to leave this with a nice big loop on it because we're going to put the vent hose through here too. The vent hose is going to end up down here with our factory vent lines. And to do that, we're going to run it down the frame rail. Zip tie up top here. And you want to have the zip ties snug, but not tight enough that you're crushing the hose. And then one down here, and we're going to grab the fuel hose and the vent hose kind of between the two posts on the pillion peg on mount on the frame. And then this one on the frame that's loose, going to come up. snug that one up. I'm going to add one here. It's important to get these guys tight to the frame because the chain is right under here, and although it's not directly in line with the chain, it's best just to make sure that there's lots of room. Our vent hoses come up and over, like I said, just out of the way of the chain, and then we're going to zip tie it alongside of these other vent lines here, and then we're going to run it down and out. And just under the chain here you can see the vent hoses again, so we're going to tuck it under. There's a cross member here. That's tough to see right in here, so we're going to tuck the vent hose underneath that. And again, this will make more sense on your bike because you'll be actually able to see where they need to go. And just follow the factory vent lines. And if you've run everything properly, you're going to have just enough hose to come out the bottom here. And once we get our lines all zip tied, we can come up with our final length for the fuel supply line. And there's a cutout here in the bracket for the front of the tank. And we're going to run the hose through that bracket, and then we're going to just mark it here with a thumb and give it a quick snip. And then we're going to add our other bolt style hose clamp. And we're going to trim this a little bit more, it's just a little bit long still. And we've got our tank plumbed. So your charcoal canister sits between your ABS pump and the side of the frame, and it's tucked in here really tight, and I would have to disassemble half the bike to get this in here to show you, but it's underneath this cross member in there. The vent off of the tank that we just plugged the Camel Tank into normally plugs into here on a charcoal bike, and the charcoal canister just captures fuel vapor and stores them, and then they get sucked back into the motor, so it's just for emissions. And it is my understanding that the Euro 5 emissions that are coming out in a year or two, all the bikes in Europe will also have these when it's in place, but it's the lower fitting here and it's the small guy. So on our non-charcoal canister bike, we had this piece in here, and it plugged in where we plugged the Camel Tank into, and this just went straight to the ground, straight to atmosphere for venting. On a charcoal canister bike, this hose won't be here. This one still will, but it's going to plug into this line. So this line zigs and zags and comes back and plugs into that small barb on the charcoal canister. So what we're going to do to plumb the Camel Tank in so that it is emissions legal still is you're going to pop this off, which you're going to need needle nose pliers to do that. We're going to disconnect this piece same as we did on the non-canister bike, and you can just leave this tucked under the seat, or you can pull this out and set it aside. This one, the same thing, you can pull it out completely or you can leave it in. Another one of our 90 hoses, slide the brass barb into it, slide our clear hose into it, one of our smaller spring-loaded hose clamps. And what you're going to do is follow this hose with this guy, just run our new one side by side with this, and when you remove this one, we're going to plug the one from the Camel Tank onto here. And this is a little bit smaller barb than the ID of the hose, so that's why we do need the spring hose clamp on here. And then our clear line is going to follow the fuel line that we just routed. So it's going to come down just in front of the shock cross member. And then we're just going to zip tie it along the frame with the fuel line. And we're going to plug in to the barb back here. So once we've got that plumbed, we can put the main tank back into position. And we can start buttoning things back up. So I know a lot of you smart guys are thinking, why are we taking out the electrical tray here at the back to access this hose? It's already connected to the charcoal canister, and then this runs up somewhere far more convenient to work with. Why don't we just put a splice barb in here and run that back to the Camel Tank, make life easy. Originally that's what we were hoping to do, and we tested it that way. Unfortunately, with the small diameter, or the small ID of this hose, and the sharp bend here, and the 90 here, the extra length of hose that goes back to the Camel Tank, there's just too much restriction and it doesn't breathe properly. So in hot weather, we were running into fuel transfer issues, and we've switched to the 6 mil line instead of I believe this is 4.5, and it's made all the difference. So there hasn't been any issues with hot transfer with that bigger line, but it is a little more work to get this hose pulled out and the new one put in, but it is worth doing. So now seems like a good time to actually tell you how this works and why it works. The main tank is sealed other than the vent barb that we've just plugged into, and the fuel outlet line with the fuel pump. So when the fuel pump is drawing fuel out of the tank for the needs of the motor, the level starts to drop. That creates vacuum. Normally that vacuum is replaced by air, or that space is replaced by air, but because we've got the vent plugged into the Camel Tank, and this is on the bottom, when this starts to drop, it creates vacuum. That vacuum pulls fuel out of the Camel Tank, so your main tank stays full until the Camel Tank is empty. In order to maximize volume of the tank, we decided to trim the chain guard, and it's from the factory, we're sticking out about that far, which means that the volume we've added in the back here would have had to been removed. By trimming this at full suspension travel, this all clears and we get the maximum volume, and you still have chain coverage. Where this is cut is to the back of the sprocket. So we're measuring from the edge of this little knockout here, not from the front, but from this knockout. And we're going to come to the back, and we are at 37 centimeters or 14.5 inches. And then we're just going to cut down. So yeah. So you can see at full compression, there's about 10 millimeters between the top of the chain guard and the underside of the tank. And then there's enough room behind that if you want to put an oversized sprocket on, or if with your chain, if you have your axle slid all the way back, that there's not going to be any interference in here. So now that we've got everything plumbed, we can start putting plastic back on the bike. Alright, we've got the plastic all back on. There's one more step we've got to do, and it is under the fuel cap. Stick a rag in the hole. There's a Phillips screw at the top of the fuel cap when it's flipped open. And take that out. There's a small metal plate underneath it that's going to come out. A spring and a rubber flapper valve. And we need that to be removed to create the proper vacuum to pull fuel from the Camel Tank. So you can just set that aside in a Ziploc bag and hang on to it. If you ever sell the bike, take the tank off, you can put that stock bit back in. So I've got a slight variation with this mounting plate. If you've got a North American bike with the big incandescent bulbs instead of the LEDs, the nylock bolt and the 40 mil flathead here they stick up high enough that they're going to contact the light, and specifically with vibration you can have some issues. So we've included a 35 mil bolt for that back location. And then we're going to use the 40s in the other spots. And then your clamps are going to go on the same as they did before. The only difference is that the shorter one is going to get a regular nut with Loctite, and then the other three here will be nylocks. If you're using this on a Touratech system, because these plates are sitting on an angle, they don't contact the light, so you can use the 40mm bolts plus the nylock in all of the locations. So we're just going to quickly go through the install for the Touratech. Again, we're going to take our 40mm flathead bolts and we're going to drop them in the red holes here. Like I said, yours won't be red, but you'll get the visual of which ones go where. And then a standard nut on each. I'm going to take our saddle bracket. Again, this is the back of the bracket here, and we're going to put it on like that. So 16mm flat and a nylock. Again, both in the back and then the front left. And the 25mm in the front right. We're going to take our P-clamp and get this started, just a thread or two, just like before. So of course, if you have the Touratech racks, that crossbar is already going to be installed, so the first bit of the video where we're drilling and using the template, that doesn't really apply. Then we're just going to drop the saddle brackets on, and because of the length of the bolts that are sticking up, they can be a little bit misaligned, so sometimes you got to give them a little bit of love to get them on. And put our hose clamp on, and then we can tighten our nylocks down on top of the clamps. Just make sure that you have the tether in. I recommend leaving these a little bit loose until we get the rack on, so there's some adjustment and some wiggle here with the crossbar and the actual pannier frames themselves. We've left the crossbar a little bit loose. We've got some wiggle room to get this all installed. Just temporarily, we're going to take one of the bolts and get this started. We're going to hold the front of the pannier frame and the tank bracket. And it just keeps things from banging around and scratching up plastic and things. And then we're going to take our bolts and attach all of the regular Touratech points together. Once we've got the racks on, we can put our 4 button heads in. The dab of blue Loctite, of course. And then the 2 bolts that are up under the seat here that we loosened just for the wiggle room to get the tank on. We're going to snug those up now. And then we can come to the top and snug our clamp bolts up. Put our vent hose back on. And then we can come around to the bottom here and we can tighten up the bolt on top of the P-clamp that's holding the vent down. And then if you're running pillion pegs, you're going to take the 2 thick washers there was one underneath each of these legs. I'm going to put them on the back, and that gives us a level space here that's going to go over top of the Touratech bracket. Double blue, of course. And then you can take our 11mm spacer and you can put it in the front with another 35mm bolt. Like so. That wraps up our installation video for the ATR Camel Tank on the Honda Africa Twin. If you have any questions or concerns, you can get hold of me, info@Camel Tank. Thanks for watching.
you.